every Sunday.
Oh, my God, do I need to sign?
Yeah, we got a bunch of them. Yeah, signed all the checks earlier today.
I still want an air horn.
It's district association. One projects in the 5 municipalities that make up the elections. And looking at the website, it says a variety of artists. They have a big play as
I brought a full drink. Sorry I didn't get started with everybody.
Dinner.
Hey,
we just got a quick one.
Go ahead, on the side.
well, I think the first one was Supervisors 6. 36, yeah. But still, it is long. And looking at what they've funded, we have to
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm sure we can add into our vote, you know.
Yes. Well, right now you is specific for we need our. Not yet.
Okay, well, yeah, I just got that information in 2 days. We requested this. So I figured.
We have to live with the results of that, you know. Yeah. Well, he was put together. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, it's already happened.
So, oh, sure, okay. Yeah, certainly. And I'm hoping that the following.
Hey, dude, no, good. I have a lot of karma to make up.
Yes, it is Valentine's.
Hey, Darren.
That's what I'm Oh, there they go.
Oh, we can talk about it in your part if you got. Yeah, sure. Senator Williams' office. I got one. I didn't bring them. Oh, I do.
Sinister.
Based on present company on that. It's now 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the Indiana Township Board of Supervisors meeting for February 2024 to order, and I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to make one little change on the agenda because Officer Damian Brand will be we're going to vote on making him a full-time peace officer. Don't want to have him stand here and listen to all the other business that's going on, so we're going to put that first. However, the public does have a right to make a comment, so if you have any comments specifically on appointing the officer, step forward. Okay, if we don't, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm recommending the Board of Supervisors hire Damian Brand to the position of a full-time police officer effective February 15th, 2024. Damian Brand has 5 years' experience and will be an asset to the department and the township.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we hire, Mr. Damian Brand as a full-time Indiana Township officer.
Second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Jorgensen and second, what's it, John?
John had it.
Supervisor Newman seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, then, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Welcome
Motion
to the
carries.
township.
Be safe.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the January 2nd, 2024 Board of Supervisors organizational meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have one change before we make a motion.
You got it.
Last page. There was on the vote right before the adjournment, you have me listed as voting yes to put the live stream in the public meetings. I voted no, so the vote was a 3-2 in favor of putting on the agenda.
And I had just one other, just a typo on page 1 under citizens forum. Emily Gowans and Miss Gowans, I believe her name is spelled with a U, following the O.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Since we had no motion, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the January 2nd, 2024 minutes. As amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Crowley, second by Supervisor Newman to approve the minutes as amended. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So, next is citizens forum. Now, this citizens forum is for only agenda items. We have a forum later in the meeting for items that are not on the agenda. So, if you have comments on items that are on the agenda, this would be the time. I need to explain that each speaker will have 5 minutes, so we can keep the meeting moving, and need to be called upon or step forward to the microphone and give your name and your address. And Ms. Owens, we have you on the document for wanting to speak, so we'll give you first.
I'm asking for more than 5 minutes if possible. I've been asking, you had asked that I present this information and report, and I've taken the time to do so, I'd like enough time sufficient to present the report and answer any questions related to it.
I believe that the ordinance calls for 5 minutes.
The 5 minutes is for the initial
Right.
presentation. Once, if there's dialogue, that extends the time. People want to, we're certainly not limited to questions. It's 5 minutes for the initial comments.
And will I have 5 additional minutes unrelated to the presentation for other topics?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to start with the other topics, and then I'll go into my presentation. So I noticed on the agenda that we are voting on new potential planning commission and zoning hearing board members, and we were told at the January 2nd meeting that the people who were in those positions desperately wanted those positions, and that's why they were being reappointed to them, and that there were no openings, and that everyone who was on the board was coming back. There were people who were in the audience who wanted to be considered for it, and we were told that a vote had to happen on January 2nd, and so to find out that there were openings after that date, and then that no one knew about those openings to be able to apply for those committee positions seems rather unusual. So I'm going to ask that you hold off on a vote until more people can put their name in the ring for those committee positions. And, yeah,
Well, go ahead and finish up.
but that's all I have to say about that. I'm gonna go into my, did you have
Well,
something?
To answer that,
Mhm.
is that they are agenda items, and we explained clearly at the meeting on the second, and I believe we discussed on the meeting prior to that in December, that the requirement to be considered for a board, which to submit a letter of intent to the township manager, and that,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and that the township manager, as our ordinance calls for, the township manager makes the recommendation to the board. And, it has to be, in the process, he has to have a letter of intent. So he reviewed the letters of intent, and based on those
So I
letters
was-
of intent, that is what he's recommending.
Okay, so we had asked though if there were any openings, and the answer was no on
There wasn't
January
at that time.
2nd. And there was somebody who said they wanted to be considered and put in their letter of intent, and he's not on this list.
But he didn't
Jonathan
put in the letter
Spatz.
of intent until today.
Oh, no, he made his intent known on January 2nd.
It's in the minutes we just approved that he asked.
Right, that he asked to be considered for
the
that, he very clearly asked to be considered.
It's a
for
public
that.
record.
Well, also, to be fair, that 2 out of the 3 cover letters that were received in our packets stated that those folks were reached out to and asked to join these committees. So they weren't letters sitting in the manager's office that someone had said, hey, we have a vacancy, will you please apply?
So, the process is, if you're interested in serving on a commission or a committee for the township, you put a letter of intent into the manager's office. It's been a process for the past 20 years.
So I asked,
Could you let me finish? please?
yes, mhm,
Because we're having a hard time with process here. This is a process issue.
mhm.
So, and that was explained at the last meeting. And you're right, Mr. Spatz did say that he wanted to be a part of it,
Mhm.
okay? And he was told, submit a letter of intent. So after that, we got the letter of resignation, and there were no letters of intent in the office. And oftentimes when commissions or committees become available, there aren't letters of intent. So we, based upon Mr. Bloom's expertise on the zoning, we reached out to him, because he is in District 1, to see if that he would be interested in moving to the zoning board. He said he would consider. He submitted a letter of intent, and that was the letter we had at the time. Now, Mr. Spatz did contact us later with a letter, and that letter, I think we all have copies of it now, and that will be considered when we get down to that vote.
So he will be considered as
Yep.
one of the,
Absolutely.
even though he's not.
He put a letter in.
So the 3 folks that we received in our packets were all asked by members of this board or staff to join within the last few weeks. I mean, why wasn't, I guess, the public notified or myself? Cause I also work with a ton of people in the community and, have a pretty good pulse on, talent that is out there and people who are interested. I guess I don't understand why you said you reached out to him?
No, I didn't.
Bloom? Oh. Do you know who did? Is
Mr.
it?
Curtis.
So Mr. Curti and Mr. Crowley were able to reach out to people that they felt would be best suited. I think that if we're not gonna open it up to the public to say, what are your talents, what are your interests, what can you offer us, I think that it would be at least fair for the rest of the staff and board to be able to extend that as well.
And I would say to you and anybody else, if you know of anyone interested, as we've said before, we say year after year, if you know of anyone and you're talking to anyone in your constituents, your neighbors, who are interested in serving a commission or a committee, submit your letter, we'll have it on file, and as openings come up, because openings come up from time to time, people step off for various reasons, then we'll have it on file, and we don't have to reach out for people to find stuff. So talk to the constituents and get the letters in.
But what I'm saying is only certain people were asked to go out and find folks for these committees, instead of all of us, or asking the public, even putting it on our website.
Now,
is
let
what
me
I'm
just,
saying.
let me just say this, the process, to Paul's earlier point, the process hasn't changed. The process has been the same, probably beyond the 20 years that you're speaking of, Supervisor Jorgensen. It's well known in this community, as in every borough, township, second-class township, third-class, whatever it may be, that a letter of intent has to be submitted. And yes, and I will share in my very long tenure here, they come in, some don't, but it is our obligation as township leaders, supervisors, when there is an opening, to bring in people that we deem qualified. When we have no letters, when we have no candidates, this is a business, and we will recruit, and we will go find people when we need people.
Then why do some supervisors get to know when there's an opening and others don't? We
It's-
have an email from Mr. Preston that you reached out to him and talked to him about an opening. I had no idea there was an opening. I'm on the board of supervisors. If we're talking process, how come the manager doesn't tell me we have an opening in District 1 and 3? If you know anybody, let them know. How does Preston Moore know before somebody who was elected by the public?
That's Supervisor Crowley's district, and he knew of the resignation before I knew of the resignation.
That doesn't sound like good process.
And the bottom line is, yes, again, to my earlier point, we will go recruit good qualified individuals when an opening comes available.
So there was a posting about it? That's usually
We
how
don't,
recruiting
this isn't
happens.
it's not we don't post jobs, Ms. Owens, we don't post.
Why
It's
do we
not-
vote on
So-
it?
It's public.
Hey, it is
Yeah.
our
You're on the
12,
podium.
okay, again.
Fox Chapel has a posting up right now for their planning commission. It's very clear, it's easy to go on their website, it's easy to go on their social media and see that they are looking for people for their committee. It seems very simple that we
We-
could communicate the same thing
We are
if there's a
looking for
process.
people for all of our committees, 12 months out of the year, 365 days of the year. They know the process. They can submit a letter at any time. There is no, blackout period for applying.
But-
People know and they can apply at any time.
That makes sense if you were talking about the January reappointments. But this is something coming up in February that none of us, unless we're talking to the right people, word of mouth, I don't know how you find out about it. Apparently getting elected by my constituents isn't enough for me to know about these things until the packet comes. And I think everybody's upset that we're actually voting on these folks. If you just brought out candidates with resumes, I think it's good. The people you found, they have solid resumes. I have some concerns about conflict of interest on some of them, but by and large, you found good people. But it's more a matter of why are we voting this month when we need to get the word out? If it is a business, you don't just recruit the first person you interview. You get it open to everyone to talk and you find the right people for the job. Let's give it a month or two. Why do we have to rush it? Why is it on the agenda?
But ultimately, resumes, we were given the resumes and cover letters for people, which I appreciate, and I'd like to keep that as a part of this process going forward. I think that every January, when it's time to put people into the position, I think that we should have, the qualifications, so thank you for adding those.
In order to answer some of the questions on this, if you go to the township's, section 26802 says that each member of the planning commission, the township planning commission, shall be appointed by the manager with the advice and consent of the board of supervisors. So I see nothing unusual with the township manager finding people that are qualified, that we know are qualified, and without having additional letters of intent to recommend those to the board of supervisors.
But he didn't have those Mr. Purdie went and asked somebody to submit the letters.
We didn't ask anyone to submit a letter. We asked if they were interested in potentially being considered for a commission. Plain and simple.
Okay, I guess then I'm not understanding the language in which they
I
wrote the letters.
would agree with you.
But we have an interval of a month where we told people everything was buttoned up for 2024. Get a letter into Dan. In the next cycle, we'll keep you posted. We're happy for your interest. But no one, myself included, could have known that 1 and 3 were open for this month. So to me, at a minimum, we've got to get that word out. Give it a month, and then vote next month, because how would people know? This isn't a regular appointment. This is in February. This isn't a regular January reorganization. So if it's out of the ordinary, people need to know that there is a vacancy, that if they were planning on getting their act together for 2025, they have a chance right now. And I think just the more people have a chance to write in, the better. We'll vote them next month. We already have some good candidates. Why not just give people a sense that they have a chance and there's some ability to be included in the process and be aware of it. That's what my main thing is, just not this month, because I think it's premature.
Yeah, and I'm rereading these. I guess I'm still confused about the language. The language says, I told Darren I would be honored to join Indiana Township's planning committee. I was speaking with Jeff Purdie last week, and he informed me there is a vacancy coming up. So, I mean, to me, that sounds like somebody tapped them on the shoulder and said, hey, we have an opening. That's,
Yeah,
me-
Sarah, that's exactly what happened.
That's pretty standard.
That's,
I mean,
yeah,
we're
it
here
is.
to know what's going on when it happens.
That's
Right, and-
rough.
My immediate reaction is to call Peter Bloom, who's on my zoning hearing board, who you wanted last month to put on Jonathan Spatz
No, I
to
said to ask,
replace Sam Drago.
excuse me, I did not. I asked for
Hey,
them to be
I-
Only
considered.
one person at a time.
I have a very good zoning hearing board, and when that happened, when I found out District 1 was resigning, I contacted Peter Bloom to see if he would be interested to move up to the planning commission, because Peter Bloom is very qualified for that slot.
I read his resume, and if you would please allow me to say that that is not what had happened. I had asked for Jonathan Spatz, who was interested, to be considered so we could have some clarity on how people were being nominated and voted to these positions. I did not ask that Sam be replaced.
Well, he was asking to be reappointed. So basically, you were trying to cut him out.
No, I was not.
Well, so it seemed like.
No, I had
If you
no,
ever talked to me, Sarah, about that?
I don't have his resume. I don't know what his
Did you talk to me prior to
qualifications
making
are.
taking that action? Did you talk to me about that?
Why did-
How I
what-
felt about that?
Why do I need to ask you about why we have,
Works
why,
both ways.
Wait, isn't Sarah our elected official? Doesn't Kurta report to her?
No.
So wouldn't it be
No.
Sarah?
This is the.
I'm sorry, don't we pay for his salary?
We work as a unit.
But,
Individually,
so
we
wouldn't
don't.
he have the obligation to talk to Sarah about what he knows, not the other way around?
my
It should go
point
with
of
that.
asking about this is asking what are the qualifications and why we just reappoint without the board knowing what the qualifications are. We've never received that information. You've never presented any information to me with the reappointment. You just want me to say yes without any information.
Well, obviously, you
My-
have the qualifications in front of you, correct?
Now I do. I did not last month. I did not last
Earlier
year,
when
the year
this
before.
started, you asked Paul Jorgensen who made that call. You have it in front of you. You knew it was me.
Okay. I
For
think
one of them.
we've argued about this point enough. We can ask the solicitor if there's anything wrong with this process, but it seems to me that our ordinance calls for us to do it in the manner in which it was done. And since we've done that, we need to fill our commissions and our committees, and we're just going to appoint somebody for those committees. If the vote is against appointing one of these people, then we'll look for somebody else. But, it's been, and I specifically remember that Mr. Spatz was told, please submit a letter of intent. And he did not do so until this morning.
He was also not tapped when the space was open. Nobody called him and said, hey, there's an opening, when you knew clearly he was interested in the opening.
Again, Ms. Owens, respectfully, Mr. Spatz or any citizen of Indiana Township can apply at any time. There is no month. It's not just January. It's not December. It's every day of the year. If people are that interested, they'll knock.
And he
Go see
was.
our manager.
But he was told last month there's no room at the inn
At that
for
point in
another
time,
person
it was
on the
all very
commission.
true.
Well, when did this happen? How many days after our meeting when we said there were no openings, were there openings? Does
It was
anybody
pretty
know?
quickly.
Because I didn't know until the
I'm
packet
going to
came.
pose a question to our solicitor. I mean, Herb, are we, Indiana Township, in our method or policy of notification, are we in compliance with state law?
You're not violating any state law in this process.
Thank you.
I'm asking for a standard of courtesy and respect and transparency with the community, not the bare legal minimum.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're elected to do, is to show respect to the community, not just dance across the lines of legality. But I do it differently.
Please, this is not a party or anything, so please, no applause. It's not a show.
It's public
This is-
democracy, Al, and people want to
Excuse
have
me,
a say.
Excuse me.
I-
This is a board of supervisors.
I won't
meeting.
excuse you from not listening to your community. I won't. And I won't
And
excuse
I
us not
hear
letting
you.
people know.
You've said it 100 times.
And I'll say it 100 more. Because that's what these people elected me to do, is to at least put a check and balance, and at least give people the courtesy to know that there's an opportunity to serve.
And
And let's give it a month.
And at the same time, Supervisor Newman, the rest of this board didn't just get here because we felt like coming out on a Wednesday night. We too are elected officials who aren't just re-elected, as you know.
I understand,
So,
painfully
you know,
aware.
it's not like we just got in these seats because we feel like showing up here at the township.
But you
We're
have a
elected
different
officials.
definition. My definition is the people and the township are one. It's not the people versus the township. And it
I don't
shouldn't,
think,
no,
I don't
no.
think any of us see the township versus the people.
Then how could the people know about these openings if they weren't tight with people in the township? How could anybody in 1 and 3 know that there was an opening and get a letter in for this month? How could anybody know? Because I couldn't know when I was elected.
Well,
So
I would
said
point
that.
out that in the January meeting, it was twice asked whenever this issue came up about the appointments that I asked that if you were interested in serving on the board or commission, please send me a letter of interest. Mr. Spatz was aware of that. That's why he brought his letter in to me when he realized his appointments were up and hadn't done it sooner.
I don't know.
I wasn't-
I don't want to dig into why. Mr. Geary has the right to resign no matter what. He's served his community, but
Yes, they have.
when you talk to the people at our last public meeting, we were told that it was another 4 years that Dave Geary is ready to go, and you had a confirmation of that.
Yes.
And then the next thing we know, in February, we're appointing a completely different person, and nobody could have known to put their name in.
Well,
So
I represent District 3 for the
One.
last 20
One.
years, and I know, and my people keep in touch with me as well.
But they need
They
to keep
do.
in touch with the township. It's not just a personal relationship of whether you know Darren or not. Paul let it off with
Listen,
process. Paul let it off with process, and the process should
It is
be
process.
So can we,
transparent. The process shouldn't be just, I call Darren or Darren calls me. It should be, it's
That's
on the
not-
website.
That's
or
not the
we
process.
put
I've
it.
explained the process 3 different times already. I'm happy to do it.
I'm just saying it comes at the cost of trust by the community. But if you want to do it this way, that's
I
your
disagree
obligation.
with you. I completely disagree with you.
I would like a show of hands. Who thinks this was a proper process?
With all due respect, Indiana has 7,000 residents. I see about maybe
That's
50.
fine.
50 people who showed up on Valentine's Day and Ash Wednesday because this is important.
Yeah, absolutely, and so is this board, Ms. Owens.
Who
We
thinks
show
the
up too.
public was improperly notified about District 1 and 3? Who thinks so? Improperly.
First of all.
I'll go to democracy. Move on, we can vote on this later, but I think it just does not pass the test.
Okay.
All right, gavel me down, let's go.
No, what I'm going to do is say I'm going to close this conversation because this is supposed to be for public comment, not for an argument with the supervisors. When this comes up on the agenda, if you had an objection to doing it, that would be the appropriate time to voice your objection or make a motion to change.
I felt personally implicated in it because Ms. Owens brought up an issue that I wasn't informed of until it came up on the agenda.
All right, Ms. Owens, you have something else?
Yep, I do. So everyone should have received the report on live streaming, video live streaming for public meetings.
We did receive the report, and thank you.
I know you did, I know John and Sarah did, Paul and Darren, I did not hear if you actually got the report because I understand it wasn't in your packet.
I received it via email.
And did you read it?
Every page.
Excellent. Okay, great. So then you will know that this issue started in 2020 when Sarah Hertwick, Supervisor Hertwick, requested that we consider video live streaming prior to the pandemic or anything else. And the conversation went nowhere. It was never voted on, and it was never discussed. Since then, it's been brought up multiple times, and last meeting was the first time that it was ever considered to bring to a vote here, to be considered and added to the way things are done. At the time, I went to work to find out the community interest in whether or not video live streaming was something that the community wanted. I've since gathered 104 people's preferences on this topic. What you received in the report showed, I think, 94 responses. The additional 10 responses reflected in the same way, in the same ratio as the prior responses. So what that means is 90% of those who responded to the survey were strongly in favor of video live streaming of public hearings, of public meetings and hearings. Another 9% said maybe they needed more information, and 1% or less said no, they were not interested in bringing that. So this particular issue has been painted as my issue, as something only I'm interested in, but this survey has shown that it is something that the entire community strongly supports. And actually, a lot of the response really showed surprise that this is even being brought up and not just automatically part of how we do business here at Indiana Township. The fact that it's being brought up in this way and needing to be voted on is a little unusual, since it's just a logistical kind of a service, just like installing new monitors or providing the mic system that already exists in this room. I'm guessing that no one here voted on that. It was just part of doing business. It's become a politicized issue when it doesn't need to be, and actually that's been raising more questions than answering them, because people wanted to know, why are we even talking about this? Why don't we have the transparency of having access through video live streaming? You can see in your report, one of the things that that you had questioned was, how do we do this and what's the cost? And so that is in section 9, where we talk about the recommendations for implementation and the costs. It's not a major cost to the township. A lot of other townships around us provide this type of service. In fact, Fox Chapel, Oakmont, Hampton, O'Hara, Fox Chapel Water Authorities, Fox Chapel School Board all provide video live streaming. Your report also outlines other types of communication. Video live streaming is one thing, but there's also social media connection to the community, email alerts, text alerts, and online newsletters and subscriptions. Really, what people are saying is they want more information coming from you, and that's been evidenced by the 25-minute conversation that just occurred because the people in the township didn't know about vacancies on the planning commission. But if more information were coming out from you, the supervisors, and also from the township through some of these other communication avenues, then people would know, and they wouldn't feel blindsided, and they wouldn't feel like you're hiding things from them or lying to them or making decisions without them being aware. There are other issues, though, that tie into video live streaming aside from this transparency issue, and a big one is the fact that people may not be able to come live to this meeting every single time, and that could be because of scheduling conflicts. It could be because of work. But it could also be because they physically cannot come into this space. And we have a requirement to provide access to all
So
people.
Your
to-
initial 5 minutes is up right there.
There it is. You said she would give, but she's still doing her.
No, I
The
said
5
that's
minutes.
the initial 5 minutes is up, and now
Right.
if the board has questions or wants.
Board.
Thank you for doing this, Dennis. I appreciate it. A lot of good information. Last week, I was COVID positive. Thank God. Tuesday, I tested negative. Sorry. But I really got up in there with the nasal swab to make sure it's legit negative. But yeah, I mean, unlike you, I could have called it in. I could have listened in, but I feel like all of us in the community should have the option to be able to watch things remotely and keep up with what's going on. And I stand by live streaming 100%.
Nettie, quick question, about this, and thank you for doing this. When, I received a lot of different emails, and I mean, they kept coming in even today about this topic, and I've been seeing a lot of reoccurring themes, as I'm sure you have outlined, in your report. Were there any responses, because I think I saw, where did I read somewhere that I think Supervisor Khan had said that he wanted to hear both sides of the issue. Did you hear any response to this other side of the issue? What were the drawbacks, the setbacks, the negative responses that you got about the topic?
I think there were some questions like everyone has, like how would it be implemented? Really, it was more of a sentiment of, we want to make sure that when it's implemented, unlike the iPad that I'm using, that it taps into the audio, which would also be a requirement for ADA, that you can hear it, that there's closed captioning. And so, I mean, that was it. They want to know that it's done well and that we have the facility so that people can hear it, that the recordings are there for people to access afterwards. Really nothing negative. There was some sentiment of why don't people just come in person, but that, you know, we've already addressed, you know, here, which is sometimes people aren't physically able to come in person. It could be, you know, in reading the requirements for ADA, which I think is really important to consider here, really we only need one person in the community that cannot access this meeting to necessitate putting video live streaming in. And we have at least 10 to 12 people who've responded to this survey that said that they fit the requirement or the description for ADA access. So we clearly meet the need.
So
But
this
no,
would
I didn't hear
potentially-
any retort. I don't know what the other side is, other than the research that I've shown here, which is, there really isn't another side to this.
Okay.
If it is an ADA issue, is there any grant funding or federal money?
There may be. I mean, certainly we found ADA funding for the fishing pier and the sidewalks, and so it's not an enormous investment for us to do that. There's certainly the funds within the budget for us to do it. I looked through our budget and found that there's plenty of room for that. But yes, there is a possibility. And there was funding, you know, in the pandemic to do this kind of stuff, but we didn't take it.
There was a spread between 6,000 and 36,000, so those are very different.
Yes.
Were those local numbers?
Really, you know, just to be fair, this was 40 pages of report and documentation. I researched as much as I possibly could without calling up an agency, you know, to ask questions. I've gotten some information. I have another supplemental document that kind of outlines some of the tools that you might bring in. The 30,000 came actually from Jonathan Spatz, who said that's how much it costs to hook up the church. But there's so much equipment here. I really, truly feel like it's going to be under 10,000 for this. And there are a lot of community members who have said that they would lend their expertise, which would also cut the cost down. There's definitely strong support here, and you know, unless unless the township really is determined that they figure it out all by themselves, there are people who have over the years raised their hand to say, we'd like to help make this happen. I haven't heard any questions from you, Mr. Jorgensen, or Mr. Khan, or Mr. Crawley, and all of you said that you wanted to hear both sides, and it seems to me like you would have some, questions about this information.
You presented us with a 40-page document full of information, so we pretty much digested that information, understand your points.
And this is the section of the meeting on the agenda for public comment.
We're not voting yet.
But
Right.
but I
Public
actually
comment.
asked for multiple times to have a time in this meeting to have time to present, and was not
We got the
even
40
responded negatively to, just never responded to.
We received it approximately 2 weeks ago. I think we've all had ample time to review, to the mayor's point.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to address the board on items that are on the agenda?
My name is Donna Ludwig, and I live at 32 Oak Knoll Drive. Thank you, Nettie, for doing this hard work, and for the other people who contributed. I think it's shameful that she can't present the whole thing, but she can't. One of the things that we really need in being able to have this live streamed is transparency. For example, to have someone say at the last meeting, no, I will definitely not vote for it. And then when they're talked to by the media, say, I might do it. So, there's a disparity there. And the community feels a real lack of forthright transparency as far as even things like the previous argument about the, about the openings. That's been the process for 20 years or 25 years or whatever, and everybody in the township knows it. I'd be willing to bet that everybody does not know it. There are people, those of us who come to these meetings over and over to try and get you guys to listen. Please listen to what we're saying. Yeah, we might know, but not. And the fact that Jonathan Spatz presented an exemplary resume at the last meeting, and not only was he not considered, but people treated him so disrespectfully, they really didn't even acknowledge him. So, which seems to be typical.
Emily Gallons, 54 Ridgeland Drive. I guess I want to start by just calling out some of the discrepancies, which again, the live streaming would help call out and allow people to see. But Mr. Crawley started by saying that the process has been the same for 20 years, the 20 years that he's been on this board. Yet, at last month's meeting, when we asked about the process, we really couldn't get a very clear-cut, defined process. It was very wishy-washy. I don't have the meeting minutes because they just got approved, but Mr. Anderson spoke, and he spoke to how you let him know. If you're interested in the role, let him know. At any point, let him know. Again, not having the meeting minutes, I don't know, and I think the meetings are all recorded, so we could go back and check it or listen to the live stream that Nettie takes. But I don't believe the words letter of intent were used. I think it was express interest, send me an email, let me know. I'm pretty sure it was not that descriptive, nothing that sounded templated. It was very informal. So to say that the process has been around for 20 years, yet in last month's meeting, no one being able to just clearly say what the process was, bing, bang, boom. No timeline, no form, like I know email I think was mentioned. It was also, I think, said you could just let you know, call you. Like, that's not really a process. There's a lot of gray there. And what we were trying to do in the last meeting was get past the gray to definite answers, definite direction. I also heard after Mr. Cawley said the process has been the same for 20 years, Mr. Jorgensen also said we have a problem with process. I actually agree with that. And it directly refutes the fact that we have a process for 20 years that no one can cleanly articulate. Mr. Spatz is still singing at the church next door. I know he had reached out, I think, to you, Mr. Jorgensen, to see when he gets here, if he has missed public comment, if he can still speak. He's been the topic of a lot of discussion, so I sincerely hope that he'll be granted the time to kind of speak and walk through the process. But his outreach and expression of interest in the last meeting certainly met the criteria that was explained by Mr. Anderson, which was let him know. And he keeps a list. He keeps record of the people who express interest. Yet the person who expressed interest in person at the meeting last month isn't on the agenda. We're all really struggling to understand how that happens. It's exactly what we tried to get to last month. We're put off, and lo and behold, it plays out again. It's highly disappointing.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. No, the gentleman in the back.
Hello, my name is Ben Rathbone. I live at 2022 Olivitri Drive, part of the Richmond community, and I wanted to address.
Stop scrolling and pay attention to what's being said.
Excuse me, sir.
He makes a fair point. I'd like to address both of the points that Nettie brought up. You know, starting with the process for this thing. One of you said it's a 20-year process. The process you described is as old as time. It's a couple of people in a back room deciding which one of their buddies they would like to point into a circle. Maybe not appropriate for this setting. And didn't the township just set up a system to inform the community on newsworthy events? Seems like a pretty great application for that service. I don't think I've gotten a single notification through that service since it's been set up. And, you know, all due respect to Mr. Kurdine, but he doesn't know everybody in the township. You don't know what you don't know. So if you blast that out to people that subscribe to that service, you might get a deeper pool of candidates. So it seems like that is a system you took the time to set up. Why not use it? As far as the streaming goes, it seems pretty obvious. This is something people want. You know, Mr. Khan, I've heard you say in prior meetings not many people watch the stream. I think you're not counting the people that watch the recording after the fact, which is me. My daughter's only awake for about 3 hours in the evening. I don't want to take time out of my schedule to do this. I hate that I'm here right now and not putting her to bed at home. I hate it that I'm here, but I'm here because I think this is important. Okay, so you're discounting that, and it's important to me to have access to that, to be able to see that. Mr. Jurgensen, in the last meeting, you said your mind's made up. You've decided on this, you're not changing. And I have to say, I think that is a very dangerous attitude to have for someone sitting in one of your seats. I think you have a responsibility to hear new information and process that appropriately. Not be scrolling on your phone while I'm up here, taking time out of my schedule.
I'm gonna address that.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. This is Citizens Forum. This is
know what I'm doing.
This is Citizens Forum.
Knock yourself out.
I think you expect civil, respectful responses from us and interaction from us. Very reasonable. I think we should be able to expect that when I take time out of my schedule, when I'm not at home putting my daughter to bed, that I'm here, that I have 100% of your attention when I'm at this podium. And I think that is a very reasonable expectation. You have a responsibility to take in information and evolve and grow. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but for you to say your mind's made up is a very dangerous place to be. And Mr. Khan, you said in the last meeting you want to vote to decide it once and for all. That's not how this works. You never decide anything once and for all. You're deciding it for as long as you three are voting in lockstep with everything. Okay? That's not how this works. Life is going to evolve. Progress is going to happen. It has to. And if you three continue to just ignore everything that people are saying, the only thing you are doing effectively in these meetings is making a very compelling argument for term limits. That's what you're doing. So I hope you stop that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
The lady back there first.
Good evening. My name is Megan Carson at 505 Oak Ridge Drive. I know many of you guys personally because I myself served the township as a chair of Parks and Rec. And I want to acknowledge and thank you guys for the service that you do because I understand it is not easy to stand in front of a room full of people and have people put opposing views up against yours. I get it. I understand. But I'm here to ask Mr. Jorgensen, since you are my representative, to please consider doing the streaming for myself. I'd like to be a more active member of the community, but right now, for me, it's difficult because I work full-time, I'm a VP of a nonprofit, and I have 2 small children. So I do watch the recordings, and I appreciate being able to keep informed and feel like I'm still a part of the community and know what's going on by watching the recordings, and I would appreciate it if the township could offer that. And I think it just helps provide some clarity for me on the new up-and-coming activities. I love the new service that you guys are putting out. I have signed up for it, but I just wanted to ask for you to support it for people like myself who can't always make it because of family and work responsibilities. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dawn Long, and I live at 4040 Park Place, and I'm also here to request live streaming from your meetings. I wanted to give a voice at least to some of us who have disabilities, and unfortunately, people with hearing disabilities and hearing loss have quite a bit of difficulty attending this meeting and understanding what's being said. It is much easier to watch this video and have closed caption available. I'm very fortunate that I have some hearing and I can combine that with lip reading, but I have family members who are profoundly deaf and spent their life in silence. And unfortunately, these sorts of opportunities weren't available to people for most of their lived experience, but we do have this opportunity here. It is being rolled out at other smaller communities, at the school systems and things like that. So, I mean, I work full time, I put in more than a 10-hour day to try to make it here, and my husband's flying out, so I'm hoping to see him and my 3 kids yet tonight. But really, it's something that those of us who can't hear well, people who have other illnesses, are more elderly or disabled people who might not be comfortable coming out in winter or when the weather is bad, or quite frankly, just riding at night. There are a lot of people who really would benefit from this service, and I do hope that you consider that. I just think that it's great to get as many people involved in our township and what is going on and be part of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Linda Mastrelli, 5 High Creek Drive. What I've heard through the grapevine is if you have the vote tonight on live streaming, it'll be 3 to 2 to not allow live streaming. I'd like to know, will we have a discussion, will you guys discuss before you have your vote, what valid reasoning you have to not allow live streaming? Are you hiding from transparency? We're all residents, and as everyone here is saying, we all want it, and a private citizen should not have to take her time and her equipment to live stream if we can do it ourselves within our township. You need to think about what we want as residents. You have a lot of people here, and I feel like, as somebody else said, it's always going to be 3 to 2 for everything, which is very disheartening. If you're afraid of transparency, you can always have an executive meeting back in the corner and not tell us about it and keep us in the dark, which I assume is what happens. So if before you vote, I'd like each of you to explain why you vote the way you do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments? Yes, sir. I'll get to you in a minute.
Yes, Dr. Lubick, 1941, excuse me, Fox Chapel Road. I'm going to use a visual aid here, just point something out. There's a device right there in front. Excuse my technical ignorance, I don't know what it's called, but it allows people on the board, and I've seen it a number of times at these meetings, where they're not physically present at the meetings, but they get to hear the proceedings, and they even get to vote on issues. Why not extend a similar courtesy to the residents of this township through live streaming? I can't think of a single legitimate reason why that shouldn't be allowed. So I just want to point that out. Everybody on the board has a chance, not to be here, but to participate in the meetings and even vote. But you're saying, what I'm hearing here is some of you don't want the same or similar courtesy for the residents of the township. And I hope you can reconsider your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
So I think there's just a general sense that we are a vocal.
I'm sorry, name and address, please.
Tom Drake, 105 Hodel Terrace. I think there's a feeling that we're like a vocal minority of people that regularly come here. And I think what like Nelly's survey and Nettie, survey, and the thing you did, John, I mean, these are sweeping responses to these things that are happening, these surveys and stuff. We are not a vocal minority. We share the majority's interest, I believe. Mr. Crowley, nothing against you personally. I think we're actually related by marriage, by blood, by marriage, by blood. So nothing personal. Businesses have shareholders. Municipalities have constituencies, right? And businesses can be owned by one person or many people, but they vote. So this is not, I get what you're saying. It has a budget, it has employees, and all that stuff, but it's mischaracterization. On the live streaming, like, I'm a practical person. This is happening. Like, by voting no, you're really not stopping it. You're again making a citizen have to do what I believe that the public would want done. So, I don't know what that camera is doing now, too. I mean, there's a lot. Nothing is being stopped. So, I mean, C-SPAN's quite older than me, right? I mean, it's been around a long time. Clearly, if 2 out of the 5 members of the board don't know the process, I doubt people in public do. I don't see the rush not to table this, and I would ask a very pointed question. How many of the last few meetings have they actually canceled because there's been nothing on the agenda?
Or I was going to say, board of supervisors?
No, the planning commission.
4 months?
The last 4?
I would hazard to guess.
The last one was in September.
John knows, I've seen him there, I see you there, I've actually seen him in the meeting. Is there any business pending? Is there any business pending for that board?
Yes. They're supposed to work on the
PRD
comprehensive
rewrite.
plan and the PRD rewrite.
They're supposed to do a study to show the cost-benefit analysis of all this new development.
Well,
Still waiting on
we
that.
talked about that in the summer, yeah,
Yeah.
at these meetings, and then meetings are canceled.
Yeah.
So I'm,
Well, I think
again, a very
they got
practical,
homework. No
a very
less.
practical person. I don't see why, if meetings aren't even happening, why there's a rush to appoint. This makes me nervous thinking.
But we haven't had an update for that, so we don't.
Yeah, so, the other thing is, again, this is nothing personal. I don't know any of these 3 people that are the candidates that I saw on the agenda when it was published. Well, first, do you guys have a document that lays out the candidates' qualifications that you guys are looking for?
There's no guiding document.
Okay. So we try to look for a diverse group, right? Clyde, different opinions, people with subject matter in the area, right? And I'm sure some of these people have excellent qualities. John, you mentioned conflict of interest. You know, again, I don't know these people if they're here. You know, no harm here. But one is a Howard Hanna agent, I believe.
Can I just ask you, tread lightly here?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
No, because I don't want accusations made of any.
I'm not gonna make
resident
any
here.
accusations.
If you're saying a conflict of interest because of what somebody does, unless you know pure intent, just want you to tread lightly. I want to be respectful of all constituents, across the law.
Or at least, I think there's I actually want to back up Paul, because ethical people can always have a conflict of interest. It's a matter of just divulging what your interests are and recusing yourself.
Exactly. It's not a profession.
It's not, if somebody has a conflict of interest, they state it, but that's, when I say conflict of interest, that's why I just wanted more time to process, since everybody here has some sort of relationship to development and building law or whatnot, which can be can be an asset for the population. But we gotta make sure that everybody checks out properly, and I mean, Herb, you can speak to it. Just if somebody has a conflict of interest, that isn't a disparagement against their character. I think that's what Paul's saying.
I would just say conflict of interest arises, as you said, on a case-by-case basis. Right? And that's what I think that's what you're.
Yeah.
So if someone's business is dealing with developers regularly, and they write a document that deals with development of Indiana Township,
They should recuse themselves from anything that directly implicates anybody that they've been dealing with. But we can get into that.
Yeah,
when we
and
go to
recusing,
the,
you know,
because if
they
you're
can
like the
recuse themselves
president-
from-
If you're the president of the Realtors Association, I don't know how you
Well,
discharge your
and if you
fiduciary
get
duty to
one
them.
person from that perspective, let me finish my point here. So one that is an agent.
Well, actually, you know, there was some dialogue that aided his time, so he is.
Thank you. One is a Howard Hanna executive. I'm sure he's very bright. Lists new construction development on his LinkedIn. The other, the attorney, again, I'm sure very qualified. Lists representation of developers and joint ventures in limited and real estate limited partnerships on their company website. So, like, if one of these people from the sell side of real estate wants to come into the group, be the devil's advocate and tell how our township can fend off their attacks, that's great. That's what we all want. But it seems like all three are on sell side of real estate. So it just doesn't seem diverse.
I just want to make sure that we're clear. The planning commission is not pro-development or anti-development. They are to make sure that any development that comes in, because they cannot stop development from coming in, or you cannot over-promote it, the function of the planning commission is to make sure they're adhering to the established code. They shouldn't be a promoter of development, and they shouldn't be a negator of development. They're just making sure that whatever development's coming in, they're matching the code that's been established.
They are also the body who is writing the code.
But we're the ones who approve it.
But the fiduciary
Correct.
duty is to the people, the township, the taxpayers, correct? If you're on the planning commission?
Are they legal fiduciaries?
They don't have
No,
fiduciary.
Okay.
When they're on the planning commission, their role is
They're-
to act in the best interest of, they believe in the best interest of.
In a loose form, to the extent that they have it. It's to the
It's a
people.
volunteer.
Yeah.
Like, should we be seeking out civil engineers, architects, people of that ilk?
I think we've actually had all of architects, construction managers, home builders, current and past builders.
Okay.
No conflict of interest.
To your point, it's a diverse group.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, Herb, I think even the second class township code, when they talk about planning commission, like, you're supposed to have some people from, the real estate side.
It doesn't specifically address
But it's not something that, it's not disqualification.
Yeah, sure, and I think, like I said, I think about things both sides, and having someone with that expertise to guide people to maybe more, or, you know,
Yeah, I think they have
engineering
strong
types.
resumes. To me, it was just a question of process or lack thereof, with giving everybody a chance.
Okay, well, I'll take it a
to
step
crack into
further.
that.
I think it's a lot of sell side, you know, people in the real estate business. So, you know, again,
So I have you,
all,
I have you 30 seconds.
all three of them, you know, it's just a preponderance of similarness. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys' time.
Thanks for your comments. Anybody else want to address the board on items that are on the agenda?
Howdy, it's Dan Walker on 143 Rollins Run Road. I didn't prepare too much for tonight. I didn't plan to speak, but I guess I did want to say something in regards to the videos live streaming. It seems to me like this is a discussion of adding a public service to the community here to stream the meetings we're doing here, so that people that can't make it are able to access that information. I would say that something like a community organization like my church offers that, and it sounds like many other churches do. And it seems that would boil down to a discussion mainly of cost. The primary concern would be around the cost. My limited understanding of the budget and my limited understanding of the cost of adding this service is that you've done a good job of balancing the township's budget, and we would be able to most likely easily afford whatever additional overhead the enablement of this live streaming would bring. I guess I think of it conceptually like a school bus. I grew up out on a farm away from the school. The bus went around and served the community. There was no discussion of, well, you had to drive to this place to get picked up. There was a stop I had to walk to, but it wasn't that far. For attending these meetings, there are people that are homebound. If one of those residents is able to participate or at least understand what's going on because we offer this low-cost service, I feel like that would be a benefit to the community and something that we're all paying our taxes for. So that's everything I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm Jonathan Spatz, 436 Church Lane, and I would like to bring up 3 points to discuss my astounding displeasure and that I found with the process in the township to advertise positions for the boards, including, in my case, the Planning Commission and the Zoning Review Board. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Have you guys have seen this? This is what Fox Chapel puts out. It says, volunteers sought to fill vacancies. Please call the township. Let's know there are vacancies on these boards. Go ahead. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to go through what happened to me when I expressed an interest in being on the Zoning Review Board or the Planning Commission. And that happened January 2nd at the last meeting of this board. And I expressed an interest, and it was put up that perhaps I could be voted to the board, and it was voted down. And I had asked Mr. Anderson, what do you have to do to be on the board? And he said, I'll send you something. So January 3rd, I called Mr. Anderson and said, I'm looking for what you're going to send me. That afternoon, 1 o'clock, he sent me an email with 2 pieces of paper extracted from I don't know what, that basically said, on either of those boards, the township manager appoints the members of the board subject to review by yourselves. 3 o'clock that afternoon, I got back to Mr. Anderson and said, well, where did you get these pieces of paper from? And he never replied to that request. I did find out myself about the Pennsylvania Municipal Code, and so January 11th, I went to have a discussion with Mr. Anderson and told him what I'd found, and I figured out what you have to do to be on the board and how things work out. And we had a very pleasant discussion, I think, didn't we, Dan? We talked very nicely about things. But you held something from me. You didn't tell me there were vacancies on the Planning Commission and the Zoning Oversight Board. You didn't tell me that. I only found that out Monday this week, looking at the agenda, when I see that there are 3 people to be appointed to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Hearing Board. Now, one of those people I know fairly well. He's a neighbor and a very fine, respectable gentleman. We differ on certain views on some things. And I called him and asked him what was going on. He told me January 9th, before I met with Mr. Anderson, he had a call from Jeff Curti, who said, would you like to apply to be on the Planning Commission? And I told this gentleman, Mr. Bloom, we were on fairly good speaking terms, we had quite a long, lengthy conversation. I told him of my interest to be in this business, and I sent him the draft of a letter of application that I intended to send to Mr. Anderson, along with my resume. He replied, during our discussion, he said, well, I might be open to setting aside, and perhaps if you wanted to be on the board, perhaps I could do that. I will talk to Mr. Jorgensen and get back to you. I beg your pardon, what did you say?
1 minute remaining.
How many?
1.
1 minute remaining, like 22 minutes for your friend, and on September 2nd? No, I don't think so. Anyway.
1 minute, sir.
So Mr. Bloom said to me, I talked to Mr. Jorgensen, and why I think you're thoroughly qualified based when I sent him the letter and my resume. He said, I'm still going to go ahead and stand for the board. Now, my qualifications, according to Mr. Bloom, who knows, are adequate for this job, and I have a great interest in it. Not only have I been here 44 years, but I've canvassed in all neighborhoods, including Shawnee Ridge.
Sir, your 5 minutes, Rob.
Excuse me for saying, but in September 2nd last year at your meeting, didn't your friend, your neighbor in Shawnee Ridge, didn't he have 22 minutes of time?
I have no idea how much time.
I have a very good idea because I've heard the recording.
Mr. Spence, prior to your arrival here, we did, beginning last month, institute 5 minutes per citizen in the Citizens Forum. That was announced and instituted, so.
That was announced last year too.
It was.
It was announced last year. And Mr. Moore got 22 minutes. I will say in conclusion, perhaps I'll go 7 minutes. Would that be okay, 7 minutes perhaps? 7 minutes, thank you. In conclusion, I would like to say that I fulfill all the requirements of section 604 of the code relative to providing protecting facilities and other public requirements as preservation of natural, scenic, and historic values. I would not have voted on the zoning review board to allow the development at Fox Chapel Estates, which then became Indian Trails. I would have at least discussed that with the community. I am not involved in real estate, other than I have bought and sold farms around here. And I would request that you hold up on electing people and consider me as a candidate for the Planning Commission or the Hearing Review Board. Thank you for your time, Lara.
Thank you. Okay, here, see,
If I didn't use my full 5 minutes, can I make another quick comment?
if there's nobody else wanting to make a comment, you can talk for 2 minutes.
I just heard described sounds an awful like collusion. Sounds an awful like exclusion. Sounds an awful like the interest was expressed, ignored, followed up on, not informed there were openings after there were openings by the manager, who is the one who makes the recommendation. That's shameful. Then to have a candidate talk to an elected board member and wait to make his decision, consider seating, but want to talk to the elected board member first to get his opinion. Guys, there really aren't any words. For us, the residents, the taxpayers, and how this is all working. Mr. Solicitor, I mean, if I were you, I'd be nervous. As someone who has personally been in litigation with this township since 2016, it's egregious.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, seeing nobody else raising their hand that they want to speak?
Oh.
Hold on.
Mayor Kahn, thanks. I'll be brief. Haig Sequoian, 323 Blue Run Road. I live in Walnut Woods plan, just over the hill. It sounds like there's a lot of contentious issues going on in the township right now. One that I've heard, and I'm in full support of, which I don't think should be contentious at all, is the approval or consideration of live streaming in the township. It seems to be a pretty apolitical public service that the township and the community want. So I'd ask the board to consider approving that measure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Very quickly, my name's Peter Bloom, and I'm a resident of 405 Church Lane. And I just wanted to correct the record briefly. I did have a conversation, a very cordial one, with my neighbor Jonathan Spatz about this position. He indicated that I had talked to Mr. Jorgensen about it. In fact, I did not. I have not talked to Mr. Jorgensen about the position. And so that's incorrect.
I'm sorry, you told me you were going to.
I did not. Mr. Bloom, we need your comments.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
did not talk to Mr. Jorgensen. As I told Mr. Spatz, I had received a call from Jeff Kernai, as he stated. I've worked with Jeff for a number of years on the zoning hearing board, and so that's why I know him. But I just wanted to correct the record. Also, I think someone said that my law firm, that I represent, are a pro-seller or a pro-developer. I don't know where that comes from. I'm not sure I even know a developer. I'm a securities corporate lawyer, and for somebody to say that I'm pro-seller or development is completely false. So I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your name, Mr. Bloom.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to close the public comments and move on, or citizens forum, on the items that are on the agenda. There'll be another one for items that are not on the agenda later in this meeting.
We have the development proposals, Mayor.
Okay.
Currently, there are no development proposals for consideration by the board.
Okay.
However, there will be two that will be considered at the planning commission. And I'll get to that when I mention it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And,
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
A motion by Supervisor Corrali, second by Supervisor Jorgensen to pay the bills. Any discussion? Now, just for everybody's information, we get copies of all the documentation of the checks that have been written over for the month and pay the bills and so forth. So it's not like we're just saying, okay, go pay the bills. We've reviewed those, but so that these meetings don't last into next week. We're not going to read through all the documentation, but we have reviewed them, and that's why we can vote on them pretty rapidly. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Old business?
I have none, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Go on to reports then. Volunteer fire companies.
No one here today, or else had a Valentine's Day. So here I am. Everything's going good between all three companies. I know all three, we did receive state grants. The amounts I do not what the other companies have received, but Rural Ridge got over $16,000. That's from the state grant. We also just received an oil well grant, and that was around, we don't know yet, but around $4,000 to $6,000. So that has to do with the oil well development project. And we did apply for that. And once again, got it for the third time, I think, over the last 6 years. Also, I'd like to thank Dan. Dan, we did our numbers this year on QRS calls, and you can maybe talk to Terry with Lower Valley. We ran over 80 to 90 QRS calls, and I'd like to thank you. You were a big proponent of that when you did gift us a old Expedition that was actually in really good shape. Yeah, it was yours. And we do use that now. We appreciate it. It's really helped our community.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yes. So thank you.
Tremendous what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Emergency medical services.
I don't have anything additional other than a report.
Can we stop there for a second, though? I don't know if you guys saw that, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but in the information we got, and you may want to catch this, there's a phenomenal story that the members of your crew performed for one of our residents on January 26th, and are you familiar with it?
I am. I was actually there.
I mean, I think that this deserves a lot of recognition, both on the website, through community citations. I know I'm piquing your interest, but I would like you to take a minute just to tell, obviously, PHI and all that stuff, we'll leave that out, but just tell the really heroic efforts that the members of your team performed. It was phenomenal. It blew me away. So.
Sure. On January 26th, Lower Valley.
That microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, could you grab the microphone and just hold it? Yeah.
On January 26th, Lower Valley, along with Rural Ridge QRS, responded to a patient that collapsed and passed out. Upon the arrival of the QRS and the ambulance, we found that she was in cardiac arrest. The crew started to initialize life-saving measures right away. We were able to get a pulse back, get vital signs back, and get her transported down to Presby. So they were able to save a life.
Good job.
We are working with our hospital command physician and our coordinator to do something really nice for the crews that were there. A recognition for the crews that were there.
And Dan, if we could do something in the newsletter, put it on the website, maybe even bring them into the next meeting.
We do want something from both departments for the newsletter coming up, because it's still new to a lot of people, the changes that have happened with EMS as of the first of the year. So,
but really, that's just.
And I want to thank Terry and Bill. These guys are here. You guys are Indiana Township residents. You know, you have to sit through this stuff. I really appreciate your patience and the updates. And I agree with Paul. I mean, you know, it's great to have the transparency statistics, but there's a human story behind all of those. So to just get that in there really sort of puts it all in perspective. So thank you guys.
Well done.
Chief of Police.
All members of the board were given year-end reports and January call service reports, not refer to that.
Once again, in going through this report, there's a treasure trove of information. I like the way that you had all the, not all, but a lot of the officers write synopsis of what they're doing. Not to put more work on you, but some of this stuff I think would be good for the community to hear in the form of the newsletter or on the website. There's a treasure trove of this stuff. But just so, since we have so many people here, there was in this packet a review of 5 or 6 pages of all the different calls that the police, Indiana Township Police, handle. And for interest's sake, there's nothing more than that, but the top 5 reasons. Number 1, the most popular call they get is to support EMS, right? Second is for traffic posts, putting themselves out, directing traffic around different instances. The third one, not a real good one, but citations for those of people who are breaking the law, going through Indiana Township for citations. Fourth is, keeping our businesses safe and business checks. And fifth is traffic stops. So I really commend, and that was like 44% of all the calls. So you guys are really busy. I appreciate the work that you're doing in keeping our community safe. I love this report, and I'd like to see it get a little bit more visible.
Thank you. Code Enforcement Officer?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Works?
Nothing further to add, Mayor.
Thank you. Engineer?
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody should have a copy of my engineer's report this month. It's in Valentine pink, since it seems to be appropriate. So starting off with the developers' proposals, we have two basically simple subdivisions that are going to be up for consideration at our upcoming planning commission on February 28, 2024. And just for the residents, obviously this is a advertised meeting, and it is the fourth Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m., so you're all invited. The first one is the Richmond Estates simple subdivision, which is basically taking 3 lots and moving them out of the open space. The second one is the Allison subdivision, which is basically swapping 1 lot for another in that particular ag district. On the development activity we have going on, the Richmond Estates is addressing the outstanding items in our letter of final matters. On the courtyard at Hidden Falls, I checked with the code enforcement officer today, and right now it's 79% buildings are up at this particular point. At 80% level, that the developer could petition the township to take over that plan, but nothing has been said at this point. They're still working on the sidewalks on that point.
And I should point out that when we do, there's gonna be a problem with a portion of the roads that's in Fox Chapel, for the winter maintenance, because currently in the past, that was done by the property owner, and currently it's being done by that developer, that the township won't be doing the Fox Chapel portion unless we work something out with Fox Chapel regarding that. And I don't know, it's been private in the past, so Fox Chapel hasn't handled their portion of it in the past. So it'll be interesting how that's resolved, but just so you're aware.
Moving on to the Heartwood Meadows plan, the construction phase is done at this point, and our code enforcement officer has issued our first model home in that particular plan, so hopefully they'll go fast. On Foxwood Trails, nothing to report there. Blue Run Road, the developer has asked us to proceed with the preparation of the developer's agreement bonding there. On Indiana Trails PRD, we reviewed the construction drawings, but basically that one, there's no additional action on that. On the old Sac City School site plan, the developer has requested the township to accept that particular site plan. Jeff and I went out and did a follow-up inspection on that. There's still some items that need to be addressed, so we're not in a position to recommend to the township that that be taken over at this time. On the Harmony at Heartwoods and Auto site plan, Jeff and I will be meeting with them in the near future, just to reinforce some of the options we presented earlier. On the MS4 annual report.
Dan,
Yeah.
that includes parking too, correct?
Definitely on parking. That's
Good.
I think that's the only thing on the list at this point.
That's a big one. I'd like to say it was dead trees, but I did not. On the MS4 annual report, the DEP did an inspection of the township's compliance with the MS4 program, which has to do with stormwater management and things of that nature. I can tell you that the township passed with flying colors. Just a few little items. Our public works superintendent is doing an excellent job monitoring all the different stormwater facilities throughout the township, and there are quite a few. On the township zoning ordinance, again, the planning commission will be taking a look at that as we bring new members in. Again, we're going to have to bring those people up to speed so that we can all move forward together. On the 2003 paving project, a couple of items to take care of there before we recommend that we take over that project. On the Emerling Park ADA sidewalk project, the grant application was put in for that project back in November. Again, this is to add additional sidewalk in that particular area. On the Emerling Park ADA sidewalk that we did get a grant for at this particular point, all the construction agreements are in place. The notice to proceed has been issued. And
Oh, and we have been awarded the money to continue on with the fishing pier, which Dan and Dan have been trying to secure. I was able to secure it through an organization called the DA.org. They're the district association funds different projects in the 5 municipalities that encompass the Fox Chapel Area School District. Everything from theater lights at Aspinwall Riverfront Park to different conservancy issues, and they want to help see Emerald Park become a premier park to have ADA access. So look forward to having more on that as Mr. Schlegel gets the bids.
so just to add on to what Sarah was talking about, is one of the plans that we have had is we're putting a lot of sidewalks down in the Emerald Park area, and wouldn't it be nice to have a cantilevered, basically a fishing pier where someone in a wheelchair now will have the ability to go down there with a wheelchair and basically move right out on a cantilevered fishing pier that overhangs this Little Deer Creek down there and go fishing. So I thought it was a great project, and I appreciate getting the grant money, and the amount of that grant is $36,000. And then finally, the Public Works Superintendent and myself are working on the expansion of our salt shed so that we can accommodate additional salt material, so that we can get great prices. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Can I ask a quick question, Dan, about Harwood Meadows PRD? So that used to be the Miranda. This is the second phase of the grant. Who's selling that now? I thought Miranda is out of the picture now.
Harwood Meadows, you mean?
Harwood Meadows PRD.
Right, actually, this is the 4th and 5th phase.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's been 3 prior phases to this development, and this is just basically completing a plan that probably started 25 years ago.
And who's currently developing that? Did you say Miranda? Is it still Miranda?
They were gonna develop it, they sold out to Twin Oaks, but
Twin Oaks.
Miranda is building it.
They're building it. Twin Oaks. Do you guys know who put up the for sale sign? Because I had a few folks from the existing Harwood Meadows, they were having some issues with the sight line.
Miranda put that up.
Pardon?
Miranda
put that
erected
up?
2 signs. They erected a sign in the neighborhood and one at Saxonburg.
Are you having any issue when you pull out on the Saxonburg sight line? Some people have said they had an issue.
I know there have been complaints. I usually turn right, so I don't have a
You're
problem.
right, turn around. Just turn around in Saxonburg, but if we could look into that or just get in contact with whoever is.
We talked to the developer last week.
They can bump that sign back a little bit.
So
People
last
are
week.
making a left onto Saxonburg.
Okay, so last week, Jeff and I did talk to the developer, the contractor, and in the approval process by the supervisors, there is a requirement in there for them to enhance the sight distances in that area. He's aware of it, he's moving forward with it.
They're just worried about the sign.
Understand?
So, yeah, just take a look at it. Awesome.
I had a question also about the Richmond Estates subdivision that's coming before the Planning Commission board. Are those lots that want to have the detention basins basically be removed from their property?
Yes.
Okay. I just didn't know what open space that was, so okay, detention basins.
Yes.
Will those then become property of the township? That whole area is the detention basin then?
Actually, the open space belongs to the homeowners association.
The HOA. Okay, got
So
it.
it will not be retention.
Okay.
Okay, solicitor?
Mayor, I do not have a report.
Thank you. Manager?
I have nothing to add this time.
Okay. Park and Rec, is anybody here from Park and Rec? Okay.
Yeah, just one thing. Hey, Dan, on the handout we got the 9I.
Excuse me?
The handout we got on 9I.
Yes.
Yeah, the same 2024 titles there, but are these revenues and rentals for 23?
Yeah, it should say 24.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
So that's 23 rentals.
Correct, that's the year, that's the year-end report for '23.
Okay, if you could just,
And I'll make sure that correction
Get that
made is
resubmitted.
'23.
okay, I was gonna say, man, we've got busy January with us.
And I'll mention that you pointed it out at the meeting, not me.
Historical Commission, anybody here for them? Okay. Supervisors, District 1.
Nothing from District 1.
District 3, Mr. Crowley?
Just a quick call out on the Little Deer Creek tunnel that's drew the attention finally. We've got the news involved, but certainly Dan, I want to thank you and Steve Galucci, Jeff in particular. We've been working on this damn tunnel as long as I've been on this board, and we're dealing with a pretty tough railroad company who unfortunately, as it came out on the news, I mean, they're able to hide reports, inspections, and now you got this massive icicle that's down there. We've been kicking rocks and stones, and it's been dangerous, but I just want to acknowledge the hard work that's finally got the attention, and finally, maybe we're going to get it fixed the way it's deservedly so in the near future.
And I should point out that Canadian National did reach out to us after that report had aired. They did have a government affairs representative meet with the chief and Mr. Cardine and myself out there at the tunnel to go over their plan fixes for that tunnel. We appealed to them to maybe include in that spec that's being developed some way to assure the structural integrity of that tunnel to us, that be provided in addition to the fiber resin polymer that's about a 1/4 inch coating that's being added to shore up all that loose debris. So we'd like to see something on the structural integrity of that in addition. They're offering to work with us on that. We'll see how that goes. One of the things that was disappointing, we talked about short-term and long-term solutions. In the short term, maybe looking for some signaling for that tunnel as the tunnel exists now, when those improvements are made. In addition, we asked that they consider working with us to realign or do a new tunnel, or perhaps change it to the crossing in some fashion. The railroad isn't interested in participating financially in that. It was surprising to me, the representative that met with us told us they would limit their participation if we were to pursue a new crossing to about 4%. That was surprising, that the railroad with the more than 127-year-old tunnel would only commit to about 4% towards an improvement. Nonetheless, we'll be pursuing any funding that's there for the long-term solution of maybe redoing that tunnel or looking for an alternative in the near future. And I want to thank Mr. Cardine and Chief Galucci for all their efforts, because
If anybody's
did
not,
bring them out.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dan.
No, that's good.
If anybody's not familiar with it, you want to take a peek at it, we all know where it's at, I believe, especially in my district. It's been, an Achilles heel for a long time. Finally some headway, thanks to a lot of persistence, so we're getting there, slowly but surely. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. District 4, Supervisor Hardwick.
All things have been pretty quiet out my way. We're looking forward to Klein and Bigler getting paid when the weather breaks. They're both taken quite a beating from gas companies. So I've had a lot of calls about that, but they know from everyone that I've talked to that paving is coming and it will be good. I've had a lot of complaints also about speeding on roads, which I've talked to the chief about, and I think that's just going to be ongoing, especially since Berry Hill's closed. Everybody's zooming around on different streets now. But once they get paved, yeah, Klein will be a highway again.
Yep.
That's all I have to report.
Thank you. And Supervisor Newman?
District 5 District 5 is good. Also just wanted to echo what Darren said. I mean, Dan, Jeff, Steve on the news, doing their thing. It's been great. They helped walk through with your congressman, Chris Deluzio, got involved. So, it kind of always helps to have your congressman write a letter directly to the CEO of the corporation who doesn't want to listen to you. So you got out there, he's helping us, get a little more leverage in the conversation. So.
Yes, I think that also added to getting the attention.
Yeah.
A little bit.
District 2. Everything in District 2 is doing pretty well. Everybody, again, is delighted that Dorseyville Road now is a thoroughfare you can drive on without fear of falling in a pothole or whatever. Most of the roads in my district, fortunately, were recently paved. But I would like to say that our grounds people are working very hard and keeping our streets. Fortunately, we haven't had a lot of snow, but they have been keeping them passable and free for the school buses and so forth. So I really appreciate the work that they do. Okay, next we have correspondence.
The first is in Drasco and Grant, required NPDES notification for their property at 1506 Fox Chapel Road, for the record. And then we also have from Moody and Associates, their water source notification for the Olympus Energy for the West Gear facility, Lido 9M well. So, for the record. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I have a question about correspondence.
What is the question?
Well, it seems like there was a lot of correspondence about the video live streaming, but nobody's, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but wouldn't that large amount of emails about that topic be included?
These are these correspondence that Dan specifically has reviewed are from different acts, Acts 13, Acts 14s, the environmental things that are happening that they're required to tell neighboring municipalities about.
Okay.
So, yeah, water discharge, fracking, things of that nature,
Okay.
pipelines.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go on to new business now. A, we have already taken care of with the peace officer.
Yes, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
No problem. The second is the possible appointment of Mr. Peter Bloom for the planning commission.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to ask for the appointment of Mr. Peter Bloom to the Planning Commission for the remainder of the term that was prior held by Mr. Miller, Pat Miller, who resigned.
And how much time is left on this term, Dan?
To the end of this year.
Okay, so the vacancy is to be filled for 1 year, and
It's
then
the term, it's for the remainder of the term from Mr. Miller, which expires at the end of this year.
okay.
And the same with the zoning hearing board position that Mr. Bloom currently holds, expires at the end of this year.
Okay. May I ask Mr. Bloom a question? I just wanted to know, what was your interest in moving from zoning hearing to planning?
I think my interest would be, having lived in the township for so many years.
Mr. Bloom, can you please come
Sure, I'm
forward,
sorry.
please? I want the room to
Excuse
hear
me.
you.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I was just
It's
curious
all right. No,
at that
it's
move,
fine.
because I've seen you at the zoning.
Yeah, I think that, I've lived in the township for a long time. I raised a large family, 8 children here, some of whom are gonna move into the township. I'm very concerned about any kind of unbridled development. I'm concerned about whatever we do on the planning commission, adhering to the law, and that's really my primary interest. And it would seem that there might be able to be more of an impact made in that regard on the planning commission, perhaps in the zoning hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there any interest in the board of tabling all 3 of these appointments for a month? Because I look at Mr. Bloom's resume, it's excellent. And I think, like I said, all 3 of them, this is good stuff. To the extent that you're going out and finding people, you found good candidates. But as a big picture, I would just like items B, C, and D to be tabled for a month for people to get applications in, contact the manager, at least feel like they're heard, and then we can have even more choices. But we know that we have good candidates already ready to go, already in the race. So, any interest?
John, I would like to add to that to have just also a statement possibly on the website so people can know to what specifically we're looking for and what specifically to send and where.
Or we could get that community notification system, dust that thing off, and put it out there. So,
I think if that's your desired action, you should make a motion.
I would make a motion to table these appointments for 1 month.
I'll second.
B, C, and D.
I'd second that.
We have a motion by Supervisor Newman, second by Supervisor Hartwick, to table the appointments to the two to the planning commission and one to the zoning hearing board for 1 month until our next month's hearing. Any discussion?
Just 2 points. Number one, John, I think that based upon what we've heard tonight, that we can spend the next few months, next year, taking a look at what the process is and can it get better. We can take a look at it and examine it. But based upon especially what Mr. Slagle said, that we do have some pending business that we've done by the planning commission coming up, a couple proposals coming forward. Plus we have to get them working on the comprehensive plan, along with some other things that we've asked. I would not be in favor of delaying this another month.
I understand it's been 4 months since they've met. I mean, I get that we have some proposals here pending, but there's still 3. You could have a quorum if the will is there to have a January meeting. I don't think it's something that if we've waited 4 months to hear from our planning commission at all, I think we could wait a month. I think it would relieve a lot of doubts in the much discussed process, whatever that is.
I think that this is an easy step, and I think that just because something has been done a certain way for 20 years, or more, I think that it's okay to hear what people are saying and hear that people who are engaged.
Sir, can you step back? Terry, someone in the back's up in an emergency.
Sorry, I just got a little flustered there seeing Linda. I think that just implementing a really simple statement asking people to express their interest, to pull from candidates is great. We've seen Fox Chapel do that recently, where they had kind of a similar situation going on as we did. It was the same people who were kind of asked to come in and do these positions and shuffle around, and it kind of wore out and was not working. And I think I'm hearing from our constituents is that, if this is going to be run like a business, then let's open it up and see what comes. I've been saying for 4 years, like, it's incredible how many talented people, professional people we have come and offer their insight and their services. And I think because we've been doing things the same way for so many years, I think that it's a shame that we couldn't ask Chris Capone to join our zoning last year when that position was open, simply because, that's not how things are run. And he's been influential in the past handful of years of checking all of the work and asking the hard questions and showing up. And I think that those people who continue to show up and do the work should have a chance to know about vacancies and submit for vacancies. So I am in support of modifying the process.
But the motion is not to modify the process, the motion
Is to table, yes, I
put it
yes.
over for 30 days.
Yep, I gave a second. That was just my comment during the comment period.
Okay. Further comments? I'd like to also express the same sort of comments that Mr. Jorgensen made. We have to keep these committees staffed so they can do their job. Now, you're saying they'd have a quorum of 3 people, but we're not having input from 5 members of the board. So it seems to me look at the process that we have used here before. That we can do, but I don't think that we should limit our boards, particularly the planning commission, because we have to have a meeting with them next month, and I'd like to see a full planning commission make any decision or whatever recommendation they would make to the board, rather than just a small part of the board.
I would like to see a transparent process that the community can have faith and believe in, but, you know, it's a long night. I think there's a lot of emotion in the room, and if you're not gonna be moved on anything, just move forward and get it done.
Well, and also next
I mean, you
month,
can
there's
vote.
2 simple subdivisions. I think having a quorum of 3 is not that bad compared to if you've attended the planning commissions over the past few years. Largely, it's only 1 to 2 folks participating on the board, and sometimes there is just a quorum to vote. So I don't think this is too far off from what we're already seeing at a typical planning commission.
But if we can't move you in that direction, and as people said, the die has been cast beforehand, go ahead. I mean, vote on the motions there. If there's nothing else for us to say to you guys, go ahead.
Let's vote. Okay, let's call for a vote. Any further? Okay, all in favor of putting it over for 30 days?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye.
They were taking bets on the
At
live
the
stream.
same time, I'm gonna go ahead and make
That's what
a
was gonna
motion
happen.
to appoint Mr. Peter Bloom to Planning Commission, Tom Saponis to Zoning Hearing Board, and Mr. Preston Moore to Planning Commission.
Are we doing them as one motion?
One motion.
You can't.
We were just doing one.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Mayor, we have a
I
motion.
understand we have a motion. I'd like to do it fairly.
It is. Just didn't read.
I understand that, but,
Are there any, is there gonna be any discussion about the fact that Mr. Moore currently serves as the president of the Realtors Association of Pennsylvania? And I know, there's a
In all
fiduciary
fairness,
duty
you
there.
threw out the word conflict of interest to Mr. Bloom, who came up to the podium and clearly stated there is no conflict of interest. And I do believe the same with Mr. Preston Moore and Mr. Thompson.
Well, I think that's why you can't do it in bulk, because, I mean, I think the concerns about Mr. Bloom, I think
Okay,
it's just,
all right,
can I just
fine.
finish my thought?
I will withdraw my motion for 3. I will make a motion to appoint Peter Bloom to Planning Commission.
Why don't we wanna talk about potential conflict of interest there?
Because there isn't.
But did you even talk to people to discuss, I mean, the
I
whole
have a
point of it
motion
is-
there.
Let me just address this, because I do think these were very separate categories. I think maybe Mr. Drake saw, somebody maybe in your firm does sell-side.
I clarified it.
Yeah.
It was
Okay,
on his
yeah.
website. He
So I
was
mean,
not
that's
aware.
gonna happen in any larger firm. That's not a conflict of interest concern. So I don't have anything that would be a red flag with Mr. Bloom. But I don't understand what the duty is as a president of a realtors association to promote the sale of real estate, how that meshes or how that could conflict with the duties to the planning commission. I don't know. I mean, is that a 501c6? Is that some sort of trade association? I don't know what he's the president of.
So, and maybe this is, Dan, maybe for you or for her, but new developments, you take Hidden Ridge, you take, the rest of them out there, they're being sold not by realtors, they're being sold by the developer. The realtors only come into play when, after somebody has bought a house, then they wanna resell it on the marketplace. So, the fact that they're allowing for or not allowing for for a development to come in, doesn't go through the normal realtor matter, it goes through the developer who sells the property.
But realtors have a pecuniary interest in developers being granted permission to develop.
Well, when he was here, the one time he came to a meeting and spoke, he said to us that we had a duty to help fill the void of the housing crisis in the United States.
And his words that Indiana Township should have a sign that says open for business. That's what he said that we should have. And to me, if there are conflicts of interest that you can sort of just find, but saying that a municipality is open for business, to me, should give people pause. Just maybe a month's pause, but that's maybe too much to ask. So, okay, vote.
We have a motion on the board.
But you will deal with the consequences. If there is a conflict of interest and they pass some of these developments and people challenge them in court, you'll have to clean up the mess later. And so will the lawyer, and so will everybody's taxpayer money. So you're crossing that bridge now.
Yeah, and
I would do my homework first. But
we've had architects who could have a conflict of interest.
did you have a president of a realtors association?
We've had
Realtors?
realtors.
Well, we have the vice
The
president.
president of the Pennsylvania Realtors Association.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, there's a motion
There's a motion.
for Peter Bloom.
Have a motion
And I
and
strongly
a second.
second that.
Peter Bloom. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay, I say nay, right?
Yeah,
You can
he's
say,
ask- he's
I've
asking-
asked this before.
He's asking the question, are you opposed, right? So you can say,
Oh.
yeah, I'm opposed, or nay, I'm
Or no.
opposed. It's clear what your direction is, because you're voting at
I'm
the
voting,
time of the question.
but
of the
I
day.
will say that I'm voting not on the resume of these individuals,
Yes,
but on
for
the
the
lack of
cause.
transparency in the
Yes.
process and the fact that we did not allow the people
Well,
to participate.
I will also vote nay on the process for this.
But I would ask you, that's not what's on the table. We've already addressed the process with the previous motion. So either you think Mr. Bloom is qualified or you don't. You can't slice it and say, well, it's a process, he's a fine.
I don't think the way the township went about it is
But
legitimate. That's
fine,
different
we've
than,
already had that vote.
I can vote against appointing somebody on the legitimacy of the process, not on the qualifications of the candidate. I think he's fine. I think it's spectacular that we have people like this in the town.
And just to be clear, the vote happens 4-1 appointing. Mr.
Okay, all right, so let's move on.
Moving on.
Moving on.
And you, and from the mayor's perspective, when you say all in favor, say aye, all in favor.
Okay.
Opposed can say nay, you can call it out to me when you're
Fine.
Okay, Mayor, the next item then, with Mr. Bloom's appointment to the planning commission, we would now have the vacancy on the zoning hearing board. And so I'd ask for the appointment of Mr. Tom Saponis, who has served for years on the planning commission, to replace Mr. Bloom on the zoning hearing.
I will make the motion to approve Mr. Tom Saponis to the zoning hearing board in place of Mr. Bloom.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Tom Saponis to the zoning hearing board. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
And then next, Mayor, is with Mr. Geary, who was just recently reappointed, who had a change in work circumstances requiring him to resign from the planning commission. I would ask for the appointment of Mr. Preston Moore to the planning commission.
I'll make the motion to approve Mr. Preston Moore to the planning commission for District 3.
This is for the remainder of the term for Mr. Geary.
The remainder of the term for Mr. Geary.
And I will second that.
Have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Preston Moore to the planning commission for the remainder of this term. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so the appointments are made, and now we come to.
So the last item, Mayor, is the possible approval to implement live streaming to the township public meetings and hearings.
I make a motion that the township does not live stream any of the public meetings.
I'll second. Second.
And as asked, now we have a second, I will go into the law. But first, a couple things that were brought up during the course of the discussion this evening, and I do appreciate everybody's discussions, and comments and coming out on Valentine's Day and coming out on Ash Wednesday. Some of you, there were a number of comments made that I started writing some of them down and just were kind of too numerous to get into. So one at the end though I do want to address, and I think you brought it up and we heard it before about, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking over your shoulder. About the audio conferencing. And we, two things. The reason we have audio conferencing for board members, as you heard this evening, part of the function of the supervisors is to conduct the business of the township. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to conduct that business, and so we do need to be present for those meetings. Now, we adjust schedules, we do everything we can, but sometimes, mostly because of business that we are forced to go out of town, we do call that in. We did make audio conferencing available during the pandemic, and it was at best disruptive, and was not well attended to. And you would think that any time during a pandemic where there would be a lot of attention given to, it really wasn't. So, getting the other thing that came up was, and from what I understand, that there's something going on in Facebook where they have a picture of me saying I voted for it before I voted against it, or I voted against it before I voted for it. I didn't see it. Some people told me about it. I had no plans to look at it. Don't really appreciate it, but let me just explain what you heard at the last meeting so that there's no confusion. Back in 2021, I think it was, I voted twice to not either one continue live streaming, or second time to not do live streaming. The discussion came back up last month was not are you for it or against it, is do you want to put it on the agenda? It's a process question. I voted no to putting it on the agenda because from my perspective, it's been discussed, it's been settled, and there was no need to bring it up again. We lost the vote 3-2. So once it goes on the agenda, and a couple of you have mentioned it, we have a responsibility to listen. And so when I was contacted by the Trib, they said, "Where's your stand?" I said, "I want to wait and hear what the residents say." And that's what I've done. There's no conflict there. One was to vote for putting it on the agenda or not. It's on the agenda, I get it, I lost that one. Now we're going to listen. And we did listen. And Nettie, I thank you for the report that you put forth. I read all 42 pages of it. I read every single email that was sent to us. And I heard, listen intently to what was being discussed tonight. But there are a couple reasons as to why I'm voting not to do live stream. Number one, I do believe, and I've felt this way for a very long time, local government is not state, it's not regional, it's not national, it's local. And I believe that local government needs to be done locally. Neighbor to neighbor, face to face, nose to nose, or eyeball to eyeball. And so I do want to keep it, I want to keep it local and in person. The second one is that everyone's doing it. It's just not true. You know, we talked to ALOM. ALOM is the acronym for the Allegheny League of Municipalities. They represent 131 municipalities just in Allegheny County. And they couldn't give us an exact number of who is doing live streaming, who not, who doesn't. But they said the vast majority of municipalities are not doing live streaming.
The vanguard.
So I take a look at our contiguous neighbors, and there are 8 of them. 5 of them do not do it. West Deer doesn't, Fawn doesn't, Fraser doesn't, Humber doesn't, and Hampton doesn't. And we have to get some more clarification from that because I know that you said Hampton does. but in talking to the manager, they said no. So, what we're seeing is a lot of municipalities who offered access more during the pandemic are actually moving away from it. So, the third reason for it was this really wasn't an issue until it became an issue. We just went through a very engaging election, and during the past 6 months, I've been out talking to a lot of people within District 1. I've spent all day at the election out here, and not a single person came to a live stream as being a big issue. No one. I checked with the office. Over the past year, not a single call has come into the office for live stream. You take a look at the utilization, it's just not that high. It really isn't. And those are the main reasons, but not only to mention there are legal concerns and obstacles we have to overcome. They say it's inexpensive. In my professional career, I've put in about 20 of these systems, and they're not inexpensive. They're not absorbent, but they're not inexpensive. There's a lot of hidden costs with them. You've got maintenance, storage, upgrades, editing, administration. It's a big step to go into live stream. It really is. And then the other, and I know a lot of you are probably involved in a lot of these meetings that are done remotely now, and they're just disruptive. You know, can you hear me? Can you not? If you don't, you know, it's very disruptive. So for those reasons, I am going to continue with my belief that it's not. I'm not going to vote for continuing live or to begin live streaming.
When we talk about disruptive, sorry, are you done?
Yeah.
When we talk about disruptive, I see where you're coming from when you are making it possible for the residents to say, provide comment, remotely. That was very disruptive, even in the telephone version. I think we need to keep in mind the ask here is to merely have the township provide something that's visible, audible, and that provides a clear record of what happened with each meeting that people can easily access regardless of their ability, their family situation, their work situation. To me, it's a discourtesy to them because it's so easy to just make this leap to greater transparency and greater engagement and understanding. If you want to keep local government local, then the local people have to feel like they're part of that government and understand it. And the best way that people, not just in younger generations, but all generations are used to is engaging things sort of remotely at first, watching the process, seeing who's up here, how do I provide a comment, who are the different actors up at the table. I think it's a huge educational opportunity for teenagers, for everyone who votes to know what is going on and to have a record that we can all go back to. It's the definition of transparency. So I don't understand the downside of it. Maybe West Deer and Fawn don't do it. They do a lot of stuff I wouldn't want to do in West Deer and Fawn. I'm glad to be in Indian Township. I think most people have the desire to be similar to the school district we're part of. We have Fox Chapel, we have O'Hara. A lot of those places are still making access easier for people. I want to be on that right side of the trajectory, but as we've all said, if there's an issue with listening and taking in new information and having your mind set up beforehand, then there's only so much I can say. And I'm not.
I'm gonna get, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like Mr. Walker said, even if you have one person at home who can't come, it's worth it. Don, who also, talked about more of the ADA issues. I think that we should be considerate of what people need and what people want. I work and I also have a child. I have to, a lot of times, almost every meeting, pay a babysitter to come. And prior to having this position, I still paid a babysitter $50 so I could come to public meetings. And the first public meetings I came to, especially at the Planning Commission, I was not able to understand what was happening. I was not greeted a very friendly manner. It was hard for me to get information, to see who was who, how things were working, what was going on. The only way for me to understand and actually get somewhere was to break in. And not everybody wants to put that on their plate. And I think from what I'm seeing on countless emails of people who said, I'm actually out of town for business, but I watch the meetings and I check your page and I check, because by the time the meetings get published or the meeting minutes get published, business has already been taken care of and it's come and gone. So if there's something that I care about and I can't come to every meeting, so I think that for people who travel, for doctors, for police, for firefighters who want to come because something's important to them, they can't. I think for parents who are stretched in a different direction every single night, who want to come because there's something on this agenda that they care about or they just want to stay informed, they can't. And when they can, they get snippets through our minutes much after the fact. And it's not timely. We don't live in those times. We're not waiting for the Pony Express. We live in 2024 where there's no need for people to not be able to participate and not have information. One of my residents said, if you guys cannot get this going, I think that I would like to talk to you about having watermarked draft minutes on the website so he can stay on top of things. This is a gentleman who I think has come to one meeting maybe, but he watches them when he can. He has 3 children, he travels for work. And I get correspondence from him all the time about various things that he cares about, but he just doesn't have the ability to be here. He is one of many, and I think that we owe it to people to keep moving forward.
I'm against live streaming. I'm going to be very short, sweet, and to the point.
Your wife's watching, by the way, the live stream.
It's bad for business. It's bad for business. Exploitation or potential exploitation of personal data, names, addresses, phone number. People don't want to speak. They've come to me and said, your meetings are intimidating. I don't want to be there. So what they do is they utilize the township website, or they'll call their supervisors, or they'll visit the office and speak to the managers, and they don't have to worry about their data being compromised. So again, it's bad for business and there's a huge risk, and that's our obligation to protect the township. Secondly, digital misrepresentation or manipulation of data. And I'll mention, there's Paul Jorgensen, man of character and integrity, and I saw the hit piece on him, and people do take bits of information and quotes and pictures, and they use it against you to make you look stupid. And I'm greatly offended by that, and I just think it allows for grandstanding and things that should not be part of local government. We're all adults, we can be in a room, we can talk intelligently, and then we can agree to disagree sometimes. But I cannot stand for bits and pieces of this board, everybody on it, being disrespected like that openly and publicly. It's embarrassing. And thirdly, it does discourage open discussion. I'm sorry, it does. My district, I had phone calls saying, I'm not coming to those meetings. I don't want to be videotaped. And lastly, it defeats the purpose. All 3 of those instances are why I voted against it.
Public service takes public sacrifice, and sometimes you have to be scrutinized by the public and have people say things about you that could hurt your feelings and are unfair.
John, I've been on this board 5 times as long. I've been called every name in the book. I've had my picture posted everywhere. I've been called. I don't care. I mean, I agree. We all have thick skin up here.
But Darren, that all happened without live streaming. So what we're saying is, if we let the township have a legitimate stream that we're in charge of, that if something strange happens, there is an actual legitimate videotape on YouTube that can't be manipulated. It's much more dangerous to have people with their cell phones up picking and choosing what they can put on.
Agreed.
So I think if we take control and we make sure that our township and our good name is behind what this video feed is, that actually addresses your concerns more than making frustrated people who feel shut out putting their cameras up and taking videos of you and doing whatever they want. We're past that point. We crossed Rubicon. I hate to say it, but I mean, like, people can do whatever they want to any of us. We just have to be tougher for it. And I'm coming to you personally. I think you're better off to just allow the township to do it. And so it doesn't appear like there is something that hiding people need to put their cell phone in the middle of the it's gonna happen no matter what. So, it's better for us to just take control of the process and have a legitimate, one official live stream.
The only comment I have is the majority of folks that I've talked to in my district are concerned about lower taxes, getting their roads plowed, and garbage removal. I too, much like Supervisor Jorgensen, have not heard a thing about live streaming, except at this board, except at these meetings since July of 2021, when it was voted down 4-1, only to come back in November of 2022, I believe, and then if it's November or December, to be voted down once again, 3-2, and then ultimately it's come up every time, and yet here we are again. I've heard, believe me, I appreciate the effort you put into SOAS. I understand the 40 pages. I too have read that. But again, for the reasons I've stated, I just think it's bad for business and I'm against it.
What is your definition of business of this township?
Financial responsibility, protecting this board, protecting this township. That's what it is.
How
And
is
I'm
that
not opening
compromised
up
by a
myself.
live stream?
I'm not going to debate, John. Right? You know my vote.
But that's
You know
why
my
you don't
position.
want a live stream, is you don't want to debate, you don't want to discuss
No,
what your
that's not
rationale
true.
is for
That's not
decisions.
true.
That's how it's perceived. And to the extent that you're
There's
gonna be willing
perception
to...
and there's reality, and this is reality.
Exactly it is. The reality is that you're gonna vote down something that I think can move our township forward and most people want. And we have to deal with that reality. So if you wanna move on, make it real.
My comments, I would like to say that I am going to vote against live streaming. Did I make a joke? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny. You said that you would look at the evidence and you would weigh the evidence, and the evidence was presented to you.
I believe I have the floor, ma'am. I'm voting against it for the reasons enumerated by several folks here this evening. The legal liabilities are unacceptable. The cost, to me, is unacceptable for the use that the system gets. I have looked at the numbers. The numbers are minuscule. When Ms.
Thankfully, there aren't more disabled people in the small township. I'm sorry that you really just don't think that the small number of us are worth it.
They're not worth 10 grand to have everybody have a chance to listen to that. I don't know. I mean, there's a cost and a benefit.
Can I have the floor? I got
Fine,
the
but I
floor.
mean, you're offending people. So go ahead.
Handicapped.
the-
She is handicapped. Do you
I-
get it? Do you
Ma'am,
get it?
ma'am, it's not, you guys had a chance to talk about this, now it's the board's chance to talk about this. Please don't interrupt. I was saying that the minuscule number of people, and she's been live streaming for the past year, and I think most people that have watched is 12, and that was
There's
only one
15
meeting.
people on here right now, and they've been here the whole time.
Would you mind letting me speak, ma'am?
I only got 5 minutes when Preston Moore got 22, so I don't know
That's
why I
because
can't
I'm
interject.
on the board and I need to explain why I'm voting the way I'm voting, and I believe that's the way government's supposed to run. You had your opportunity to speak. Not only did you have your 5 minutes, but you had a 40-page document that you submitted to us that all of us
Because
have
Dan
read.
didn't do his job that you asked him to do.
Excuse me, let's not throw.
Because, you know, it's just.
No, you know what? You guys all got a chance to
No,
say
but-
what you felt. Do you
Let him
mind
talk.
if I finish?
Well, we got.
I think that if we look at the results of the number of people that have looked at our website in just the past few months since we've upgraded it, those numbers far exceed anybody that has looked at either the live streaming as it's going on or looking at the tapes, because that number is rather small also. We have probably 7,300 residents in this township, and as both of the folks on either side of me have said, I was also very active during the campaign and talked to many, many, many people, and live streaming was not brought up one time. So you guys are saying that this is very important, everybody wants it, and so forth. That's not the picture I'm getting. We have a responsibility here on the Board of Supervisors to watch how we spend our money, to be careful that we don't exceed the money that we have available when we collect our taxes and so forth. That responsibility means that we shouldn't spend money on something that is not used or used to a minimal degree. We should spend our money on something that is utilized, i.e. the website that we upgraded significantly so people can get notifications, so people can understand what their government here is doing. They can research. We're putting all of our laws and regulations and rules and all that on the website. Everybody says for more transparency and more transparency. You know, I don't see where there isn't transparency in this township. We are not hiding anything. We are doing what we are supposed to be doing, and that is operating the township in a manner that we don't go broke, that we have money in reserve for emergencies, and that we're providing the public services, i.e. trash collection, road clearing, and all the many other things that we do. And that's why I don't believe that live streaming is something, you know, it's been said that it only costs $10,000 is what I heard said. I don't believe that. I believe that we would have to spend significantly more in order to upgrade the microphones and so forth in this room in order to properly, because I've also heard from most of you folks that you don't like seeing a live streaming that the sound is broken. You know, that the small microphone on an iPad isn't picking up everything we're saying. In order to fix that, we're going to have to change all the systems in here, and that's not going to be cheap. And if only 5 or 6 people are going to use it, I don't see where that's a reason for us to institute it.
No one said that everybody wants it. I think the main point is that some people deeply need it. And the person who walked out was one of those people who felt like they had family members or themselves who could really benefit from this service. And I'm cheap too. You know, I've talked to Nettie about the prices. $10,000 might be cheap, but would you vote for it if it was free? What if we took a collection?
No.
And the
government's not taking
why not?
collections.
No, you can donate. There's a line in our budget of township donations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfectly understandable. What if we took a township donation? What if we did a collection?
That's not part of this.
But then that takes the fiscal side out of it. And Dan, what was our budget surplus in 2023 over budget?
I couldn't say.
I thought it was $900,000 last time. So I do believe that we have the resources to do it. And you know, how many people are going to use a handicapped fishing gear? I don't know. We could just sit there and say 50 grand for some kid in a wheelchair, 1 kid a year. But to that kid, that means a lot. That's why we had people raise money for that particular thing. That's why we have the ADA. Is that it's not just a matter of crude cost-benefit analysis. I'm not just going to spend anything because a few people came and talked to me, because this is what the whole theme of this entire meeting for the past 2.5 hours is. Somebody needs to come up to you and talk to you about something for it to matter, rather than us to have a completely process-oriented, transparent system where everybody doesn't feel like they need to be buddies with somebody on the board to be heard or to understand what's going on. And to me, I'm happy to work with people. Maybe we'll figure out how maybe we can raise $10,000. I don't know, but if it's a money thing, we could do it. But we do have the money. We have $900,000. So if you don't think, what is that, 1/90th of that is worth just giving access to people who have to work or have a sick parent or have a sick child, it's cost and benefit out. It's not just cost. And you gotta look at the benefit to the community and think about how much good you could do by voting yes on this thing.
And thank you for your comments. I've made my comments. Anybody else have a comment? And I'm gonna call for a vote.
Just because, so this is a negative motion.
This is a negative motion.
And so, just people
A
vote aye,
yes
that
means
means,
no,
a yes
and a
means
no means
no on
yes.
live stream. Right? I'm just being clear, because.
No, it's
Right, so
but
when you call for the vote.
There was an error last time.
Well, then when you call for the vote, an aye means
I will be voting for no live streaming. A nay will be for approving live streaming. So I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor of not instituting live streaming, say aye. Aye. All that want live streaming to be put in place, say nay.
Nay.
Thank you for having character.
That motion passes. Okay, now we have citizens forum on non-agenda items. Is there anybody who wants to speak on non-agenda items? Ma'am, this gentleman raised his hand first.
Ben Rathon, 2022 Olive Tree Drive in Cheswick. I'm just thrilled that my comments in the first Citizens Forum had zero impact on the votes and the proceedings this evening. Mr. Jurgensen, you said it should be personal, face to face. 100% of the people that came up to this podium tonight to talk about the live streaming were in favor. 100%. It had no impact on you three. All three of you did what you were going to do, and that is really problematic. And I have to hammer that point home. That makes you not worthy of the seat that you occupy. If you are not listening to people that are taking time out of their schedules to come see you, you're talking to all kinds of people. Who are these people? Show your work, okay? Because the people that are taking time out to come here should have an impact, and we're not on you three. And it should really be troubling. And if you're worried about the budgeting point, I'd like to point out that in the budget that you approved for 2024, when you go through that, there's one number in there that really sticks out, and that's the bill to Mr. Slagle.
Mm-hmm.
Through November 8th of last year, Mr. Slagle was at 270% of his annual budget for 2023. There's your system. There's your system. We've paid for that. And I have to say, if you were doing a project at your home and you hired a company and they were 270% of the quote that they gave you for the job, you'd probably be pretty upset about it. And then if you went back and looked through the records and saw that this company doesn't even have a website, Dan, it's 2024, they don't have a website.
I need to.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we're not gonna start attacking character of anyone from this board, and just stop for a second, please, okay? Mr. Slagle, as any engineer, responds only to the information that is given to him by the township. And if you look at the report, there's a boatload of activity going on right now. So the budget, it begins of the year, we have no idea what's coming in this year. We don't. Because we don't know until it's presented here. Okay? We're not gonna shut him down in June, say, oh, you hit your budget, you're done. That's not gonna happen.
Would you as a person ever hire a company in 2024 that did not have a website?
Sure.
For any professional service?
Sure.
Yes.
And you,
That's mind-blowing.
And let me ask you this.
That's mind-blowing.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe everything you see on the web?
No.
I've worked
No, of course not.
I've worked
Of course
with Dan for 12 years, 13 years. He's a man of character. He's a man of expertise. He's given tremendous service to this community, and he's going to. None of that's reflected in a website. I can say anything I want on a website. And I think that if you're putting all your eggs in a website, that's an equally foolish mistake.
I'm not. When was the last time we did an RFP for, vetting engineers and the competency and, just what they bring and their fee structures? When was the last time we did that and properly vetted, other options? Because it's my understanding that Mr. Slagle's been the township engineer since before my wife was born. So,
I think that speaks to the quality of his work.
or maybe a lack of oversight. Both things could be.
Disagree.
Both things could be true.
But I would tell you from my experience in working with Mr. Slagle too, for the past 25 years, Board, Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, I echo what Mr. Jorgensen said about Mr. Slagle.
In
We
my
have not had
sample
any
size?
type of scandal, any type of bad press coming at Indiana Township because we do a good job.
Okay.
And I stand behind his work and I stand behind everybody that's up here.
In my sample size, he's been wildly ineffective in the Richmond community. And when I see that budget line item, and you're talking fiscal responsibility, which I appreciate, and I think that's very important, there's a disconnect there somewhere. So I think if you really wanted it to happen, the money would find its way. And if there is a surplus, there is an opportunity.
Thank you for your comments. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Mayor, just as a reminder that this is really for anyone to comment on items that are on the agenda, and you really don't have to debate those topics. We just would like to get that input for the record before we conclude the proceeding.
Mr. Spatz, is your item non-agenda oriented, not have already been discussed? Is that a yes?
That's a yes. Hey, look, I like the website. I like the way it's improved. I look at it a lot, so I'm doing a lot in the community, and I have a lot of people I visit. And one thing I would ask, could you please post the minutes of this meeting in draft form so that they're available? The minutes of the January 2nd meeting are not available on the website today. Could you post them in draft, subject to approval? It's not a big ask, but it would be very helpful.
Well, the January 2nd meeting minutes that were approved tonight will be on the website tomorrow, and that's been the process.
And I'm asking for the process to change, Mr. Anderson. I'm asking for the process that the draft minutes be posted on the website.
So like watermarked with a draft.
Okay,
like how we do.
Can I answer that, please?
Okay, sure.
I have been looking into doing that exact thing, but there's some legal questions about whether that's a work product that shouldn't be released or can't be released by law. So I'm still doing some research to look into trying to put draft minutes on the website, marked with draft right across the top of the paper. But I haven't completed that yet. Haven't made that motion to anybody, but it is something I'm considering already.
Have you had any help from Mr. Furman on that?
I haven't talked to him, but I haven't talked to him at length.
Yeah, because I've been involved in several boards, non-profit boards, and I was president of the Penn West Soccer Association with 55,000 people, and president of Animal Friends of Pittsburgh, and when we've had minutes, we've made them available in draft form, subject to approval. The thing is, I had to wait a month before I really found out what had happened to confirm what was voted on in the January meeting. And I would appreciate it if you could put it on in draft form. That's a request. Hopefully it'll be in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else have anything to say? Eddie, I guess you stood up first.
Go ahead. Okay, this wasn't an agenda item. You've seen an uptick in the website use.
Yes.
I would encourage you to go to your website analytics to find out where people are coming from, because I send messages multiple times a month to let people know about the agenda, to let people know about the minutes, to let people know about what's going on the website. I sent 100 people to the website to sign up for notifications. Not one of them have gotten an actual notification. But it wasn't because a bunch of work was done here that directed people to the website. People have been coming because I've been sending them there.
Thank you.
Emily Gallons, just a quick comment on the financials and the direction and billings of the township engineer. So as was just stated, spent 270% of his budget. There was a comment made that he spends that time at the direction of the township, I assume meaning at the direction of the board. However, Mr. Slagle spends time on things not in the direction of the board, like the PRD rewrite that has brought so many of us here for so many years. That PRD rewrite was not formally requested by the Township Board of Supervisors because I submitted a right to know request for the meeting agenda that it appeared on. Could not be provided, nor could meeting minutes showing the ask to the township engineer for things he then billed. I submitted a right to know request to understand how much he billed for the PRD rewrite language that he took it upon himself to draft. He billed over $8,000 for the PRD rewrite language. $8,000 probably would be able to buy what we're asking for with live streaming. Instead, he spent $8,000 rewriting the PRD draft language to a planning commission that's defunct, that gets appointed people outside of the process, or when people try to participate in the process can't even get named on the agenda for voting. And that's a real problem. The PRD rewrites that Mr. Slagle put in open the door for more development. He bills by the hours. Every plan that comes in, more billings. It's no wonder he's at 270% of his budget. And I just think it's outrageous to say that he's doing this at the direction of the township when there are clearly activities he is doing that are not, that you cannot point to your direction saying, go do this. And it is the complete opposite of the things that we are saying. That's why we were here tonight, one of the reasons why we're here tonight about the Planning Commission. It is important, and we're trying to get representation in that, trying our hardest to just get you to do more than sit there and listen because you have to. You're only there listening because you have to. You don't actually take into account anything we say. Can you point to one thing we've requested that you've done?
Yes, I can.
I would love to hear it.
You asked for that.
For what?
To vote on the live stream. You asked for that.
We asked you to vote. Okay. Bravo. You guys have a ways to go.
Can I get 1 minute?
Yes, sir, 1 minute.
You took some of my time, please, thank you. While Dan Slagle may be super competent, very effective at his job, I've never seen Dan in the Richmond community. I'm sure you've been there. But the gentleman that's usually in our community is he's a lovely guy. I think his name's Tom. Tom is a retired school teacher that happens to be friends with Dan. I don't really think that qualifies a person to oversee the development of an entire neighborhood. And I would like to ask if there's any sort of update on the trees we're missing, that you told Brandis it was gonna be on the final matters letter, never made it. Those trees are part of the reforestation program that's holding the hillside, and I'd really like those trees before our house ends up in the detention basin.
They are part of the final matters.
Thank you.
We have not seen that. Sorry.
Mr. Slate.
It's not on the letter you sent.
Respond to some of the comments that have been made.
Sure. First of all, let me tell you about my employee, Tom. He's been with me now for 7 years, and he's gone through several different developments, and he is extremely competent. And yes, he is a school teacher, and I applaud school teachers. And I think they're very intelligent individuals, and I would hire them in a heartbeat, all right? Now, let me finish.
Nothing to do
My
with what
fault,
I'm
okay? You're talking about my budget being 270% of what the township budgeted. You have to understand that 80% of all the billings that go to the township, probably for me, that's just an estimate, are through escrow deposits that are part of the fee structure that developers post, all right? So there's not a dime going from the township regarding those items. So when you make accusations that it's 207%, okay? As far as what I bill the township, we're right on budget. But when you sit there and draw a number out of context and try to screw me with it, that's not proper.
It's not.
That's what you did, sir.
In the budget.
And I take exception to it.
It's not out of context.
Yes, you did.
And to the question about Mr. Slagle being in Richmond, I personally have been in Richmond probably at least a dozen times over the last 3 or 4 years with him. Most recently, and probably most importantly, from the residents that I talked to of Richmond, we walked every single sidewalk with the paver, we walked through every single road, we looked at the retention ponds, and ultimately was able to get the roads ahead, paved and ahead of schedule and taken over by the township. And that's Mr. Slagle's work as well. he was there, I mean, he was.
If that was coming from the developers, wouldn't there be an offsetting line item in the budget to show that as revenue somewhere? So that means the budget's incorrect then.
Do you have any more comments? You had before. Okay. Okay. We
have a
budget
motion
meeting.
and a second.
No more comments?
No. I missed part of the meeting, and I'm dismayed to hear that you, the three amigos voted things in like we knew you would. And that's why we need we need this live streaming, which will continue. So there will be transparency when you make inconsistent statements or you ignore what's being asked. So, you know, that will come in. Also, I have a question. Last meeting, the second, at the end of the meeting, you said meetings are going to be moved to Wednesdays. Was that something that was like made everybody's? Why was that decision made? And
No, I'll take that.
Did everybody know that?
Yes, of course. This came up in our January 2nd reorganization meeting, and it was a motion, a second, and it passed unanimously. There was
Okay.
no backdoor deal. There was the five of us in the public setting. It said, meeting's okay on Wednesday. Everybody looked at each other and said, sure,
Sounded
5-0.
like it
5-0.
sounded like it was a done deal when it was brought up. And the other thing about, you know, hey, everything.
Hold on, just,
Yes.
this is not good, but the three amigos and the two sidecars, it was 5-0. It wasn't a done deal. So stop with that nonsense. Just stop.
You guys stop with the nonsense. You guys do it. But
Okay.
as far as the things being on the website, if everything is communicated so well on the website, why didn't people know about these vacancies? It's not being communicated. You're not doing it.
Thank you for your comments.
Make a motion to close.
Well,
the
I'm not
meeting.
sure, I think you do have to be sure there's no one else that wants to know.
Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment?
We have a motion, I have a second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for attending.
It's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You sit there and just talk.
And I do say before, I mean you on that summer too. I mean, I know you had this stuff, but I say before, you're on it, and I don't work.
Jonathan, it's just one person.
Screening your calls.
The next step is actually to Township 48. This was the easy way that got them looking like they were actually. And the other way was to pit people against them, which doesn't. And I talked about that, except that